Hi there, I'm Emily with the Gulf Council, and this is a public hearing video on a framework action that considers continuing management measures that are designed to reduce the mortality of reef fish upon release. So let's start with an explanation of barotrauma. Barotrauma refers to the injuries that are caused by the change of pressure that is associated with reeling a fish up from deep water. And barotrauma can actually cause mortality or death upon release. Some signs of barotrauma include a stomach protruding from the mouth, bulging eyes, there can be a distended midsection or even the intestines protruding from the fish. They can be sluggish in their movement or actually completely unable to swim back down from the surface, or they could just have lifted and sort of bubbly scales. So next, let's think about federal law and a little background there. So National Standard 9 of the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation Act does say that management measures shall minimize bycatch, but to the extent that bycatch cannot be avoided, we should minimize the mortality of bycatch. So that's sort of what we're talking about here. So in 2020, Congress also passed the Descend Act, which requires people that are fishing from commercial or recreational vessels for reef fish in the federal waters of the Gulf to have a venting tool or descending device rigged and ready on their vessel. So the thing about that is that Descend Act expires in January of 2026. Which leads us to why we're here. So the council is actually looking at implementing requirements for those commercial and recreational fishermen to possess a venting tool or descending device that is rigged and ready for use when fishing for reef fish in the Gulf. Now that is in order to continue those regulatory requirements of the Descend Act. And we're doing this because research studies have shown that the proper use of descending devices or venting tools does reduce discard mortality of many reef fish. And that does result in an increased conservation and sustainability of our reef fish stocks. So the council is considering a simple action here. It is to implement a regulatory requirement for commercial and recreational fishermen to possess a venting tool or a descending device on board that is rigged and ready when fishing for reef fish in the federal waters of the Gulf. Now, this would sort of replace the provisions of the Descend Act that are set to expire, and there will be no expiration to this council-generated regulation. So let's talk about the impacts that we anticipate from this action. So first, when venting tools and descending devices are used properly, they have been shown to increase survival of released reef fish species. Now there is a program called Return 'em Right that does offer education on the proper use of these devices. Next, we consider the cost of this action. And tools can either be bought or they can be homemade. And we anticipate that costs will be reasonably minimal here, especially because that Return 'em Right program actually distributes gear to people who take the education module. So next, we think about the fact that possession of these tools is probably already pretty widely adopted because there is already a regulation in place that requires it. And then finally, the council has heard pretty widespread support for the use of these barotrauma mitigation tools already. So with all that, the council does plan to take final action on this during their November 2025 meeting. We would like to hear your feedback, whether you support the continuation of these provisions or whether you don't, and give us a little bit of rationale as to why. You could give us that comment either by joining us in person or online during our November council meeting, or you can simply submit a written comment either through our online comment form that's located at this link, or you can just email us at gulfcouncil@gulfcouncil.org. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and send us your comments.